Hello everyone, and welcome to Kaya Thinks Film. Today, I'd like to talk to you about Kaneto Shindo's 1964 film, Onibaba, and not only how it reflects on a country post-war, but how it specifically commentates on Japan in the 1960s. The classic gothic ghost story follows a mother and daughter-in-law who, while their son and husband respectively is away at war, scrape a living by killing stray samurai and selling anything of value in return. 1961 saw the beginning of the Shinjinri generation in Japan, uniquely dubbed as a breed of new humans, as they were the first generation of people to not experience suffering during the war or directly after it. In fact, they grew up towards the end of a period named the Japanese economic miracle. Onibaba, in a similar sort of way, opens up with an eerie and grim but nevertheless successful hunt of two samurai, depicting our protagonist to start in a favourable position, overcoming a close, looming threat of war. Shindo, however, was not blessed with a youthful ignorance and found himself in the thick of World War II, and nearly much worse off as well. Despite not performing well in his military physical exam, he was still drafted in with a group of 100 men, and he made it out as one of only 6 surviving or not missing members of that naval team, managing only just to make it out alive and returning to work afterwards. Being born in the Hiroshima prefecture, it's no surprise that he went on to make several films about the effects of nuclear war and about the impact of nuclear weapons on his birthplace. For people like Shindo and others his age, the decades-long scarring of war still remained. It's not long into the film that our protagonists find out that Kichi, both either their husband or son, has died in the war. Despite their new way of life, they can never seem to escape it. In a similar way, not knowing about the war was a luxury that very few had in a 1960s Japan. The fantastical elements of the film come into the fold when our mother-in-law becomes immensely jealous of a relationship that she can't have. While disapproving of her daughter-in-law's relationship with another man in the village, she comes across a samurai wearing the iconic Hanya mask. Through curiosity and greed, and with great difficulty as well, the woman manages to steal the mask off the face of the samurai. Subsequently, she uses her newfound possession to try scare her daughter-in-law out of the relationship that she finds herself in. However, by way of some pathetic fallacy, the older woman then becomes nearly inescapably bonded to the mask, and I think it's this part specifically that can be interpreted in a couple of ways. Regardless, the mask clearly represents the trauma, grief, and pain of war. It binds to you as it did the woman and never lets you go. If we imagine our Central 2 as this new young generation in Japan, one could see that trauma being adopted by them, showing how an event so massive is bound to cross generational lines and how the stigma from others is forever unavoidable. However, as the mask's curse is transferred from those fighting the war to those away from it, could the film be read as a message of warning to the older generations? A warning to not use the trauma of war as a tool for unnecessary sympathy, and to tell an older audience of the film to try leave their trauma behind and not pass on the wretched curse of war to this new generation of the Japanese people in the 1960s. In 1960, the US and Japan signed a security treaty, allowing the presence of US military bases on Japanese soil and forming an agreement for them to defend one another in the case of an attack. This revised version of the 1951 treaty did have a lot of opposition and led to the Ampo protests, which were the largest popular protests in Japanese history. Groups often forming from the Japanese Socialist Party, Japanese Communist Party, and even more conservative business groups were fearful of military entanglement, as well as a nuclear threat from China or the Soviet Union, and of a distancing with the country's desire for neutrality and its pacifist sentiment. Fear was clearly all around, and opposers to the treaty evidently didn't want a cycle of fear and war to repeat itself, and through violence and revenge, that's precisely what the film depicts. Furthermore, even when Tokyo hosted the 1964 Olympics, showcasing how far along it had come as a country and how technologically advanced it was too, Japan was still compared to its wartime self. the consequences of war stain, and those stains run far and wide, affecting so many of those that are not directly involved in a conflict, and the film shows that perfectly. No matter how you spin your interpretation of Onibaba, its iconic status is undeniable. The film is full of eerie imagery, from the mask that ties the story together to the swaying long grass and the all-consuming rustling of the wind. Although thematically dense, the film is quite stripped back and wraps its audience in its wonderful atmosphere building and harrowing, jumpy score. It's well worth a watch and a real staple of both Japanese films and the horror genre itself. It's a film that at the time I'd been wanting to watch for a while, and I'm so glad that I did. And on that note, thank you so much for watching. Go watch a film that you've always wanted to but have never got around to seeing, and I'll see you again soon.